WGAM, The Game. This is the Golf New England radio show with J.J. Truman on Sports Radio WGAM, The Game. And it's brought to you by Golf and Ski Warehouse, featuring Northern New England's largest golf selection at everyday low prices, locally owned and operated since 1989. Owl's Nest Golf Club. Visit owlsnestgolf.com for information on great golf and stay packages. Golf USA. The brands, the selection, the know-how. Before you go to play, go to Golf USA. Located at 707 Milford Road in Merrimack. Amherst Country Club. Make your tee time today at amherstcountryclub.com.
Welcome to the New England Golf Radio Show. I am J.J. Truman. We are your source for everything golf throughout New England, PGA Tour, European Tour, although we won't talk any European Tour today. We're gonna stick to the PGA. Chris is upset. I got Chris Arcand behind the board. Didn't get his yoo-hoo for the second week in a row. Chris, how are you? Are you okay back there?
I'm weaning myself off the yoo-hoo. It's a long process. It's going to take a while. There's 10 more steps, I think, in the 12 steps of the yoo-hoo.
And the first step is
recovery.
not to have it week one or last week, and then this week you don't have it again. I don't know. I'm not nervous because Chris was rock solid last week, so I think he's going to be all right. We have a full show today for sure. We're going to recap the Greenbriar. We have Mike Cullity from the Union Leader, a contributing golf writer for Golf World Magazine, also writes for the Union Leader. Did an interview with Scott Stallings. He's on the line. We're going to talk with him. We're going to recap the New Hampshire State Stroke Play, which Nick McDonald happened to win, and we'll have him on. Then we'll talk about the WGC Bridgestone at Firestone, Tiger's return. We talked about that last week. Obviously a big deal in the world of golf. We'll also talk a little bit of PGA Championship coming up next week in Atlanta. A lot of different things going on there. We're going to talk about whether Tiger's going to be a factor, who's going to be in the mix there, is the heat going to be an issue. But let's get right into our first segment here, talk about the Greenbriar. Scott Stallings won last week. He's a guy who absolutely bombs it off the tee. And did I mention this? Chris, did you pick him last week to win from Worcester, Mass? Do you remember that?
I believe I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Chris is on a roll.
That's
Me
right.
and Chris have been on a roll. If you're looking to place a wager somewhere in some city, I don't even know where you can do that.
Ask us.
Yeah, ask us, because we have been on a roll. Well, I was on a roll before Chris, but Chris got last week's winner. So Scott Stallings wins it from Worcester, Mass., bombs it off the tee, solid short game, wins in a playoff, shoots 70, 65, 66, 69 on the final day. Against Bob Estes in the playoffs. Bill Haas is also in the playoffs, another guy who bombs it. So Stallings birdies the 18th to get into a playoff, birdies the 18th hole, which they played in the playoff, to win the thing, which is an interesting thing because it's a par 3. A lot of courses don't end in a par 3. We talked about it last week. Just kind of a strange thing for guys to have a par 3 at the end of the round. You know, an opportunity to make birdie, as we talked about. He makes 2 birdies. He's 26 years old. Interestingly enough, from Worcester, but played a lot of golf in New Hampshire and was up here in the summertime and played in the Red Ryan CYO thing, and that's why we have Mike Cullity on. He did a great interview with him, had a piece in the Union Leader that he wrote about it, had another follow-up interview with him this week. Mike, how you doing this morning?
Hi, JJ. How are you?
We are doing well. We are excited to have you on. Thanks for coming on. Mike has a website. He's, as I mentioned, he's a contributing writer for Golf World Magazine. He does a lot of things in the world of golf. Had the opportunity to talk with Stallings. And Mike, what's the deal? Where did this guy come from? What happened? What's his association with New Hampshire?
Well, Scott was born in Worcester, as you alluded to, but he grew up primarily down in Knoxville, Tennessee. But his mom, whose name is Cheryl, is a Hampton, New Hampshire native. And so Scott's grandparents, whose names are Barbara and Bobby Conant, still live in Hampton. And while he was a teenager, he would spend part of his summers up here with his grandparents.
And that's just, it's crazy to think about a guy that wins on the PGA Tour spending his summers in New Hampshire. It's, you know, do you think of New Hampshire as like a summer?
During those teenage years, he became a regular competitor at the Red Ryan CYO tournament, which was recently played for the 54th time at Derryfield Country Club right here in Manchester. And he, in 2002, was the intermediate division medalist. He shot a 66, which I believe is still the record for qualifying at the Red Ryan. And then the next year, he won it. He came back and won the 2003 intermediate title here. And he told me a story about how he got stuck in traffic on his way to his first round match that year, and he was almost disqualified. But fortunately, his opponent was gracious enough to wait for him to arrive, and he ended up winning that match and then going on to the title.
Yeah, gracious enough to let him arrive, and then he politely beat him and went on to win the title. And you know what the other funny thing about that story is? Where's the traffic in Manchester? I mean, honestly, the Derryfield Country Club, not a lot of traffic around there, so something must have been going on that weekend.
Well, what happened, what Scott told me was that he took a wrong turn. I think he was a new driver at the time. He wasn't, he was still a teenager, so he got on 93 South instead of 93 North and ended up down by the Mall in New Hampshire and then got stuck behind an accident. That's the story he told.
Yeah, if you're coming from Hampton, I guess that makes sense. Now, a guy that grew up in Tennessee but spent his summers up here, I guess that makes sense. It's probably really, really hot in Tennessee during the summertime. Probably better to be up here at Hampton, kicking it, playing some golf. And just interesting to see that this guy has some lineage here. Now, I read the piece, great piece in the Union Leader you had there, and I know you have another follow-up piece coming out today. But he talked about drawing from that win in the CYO tournament, that he actually recalled shots and kind of visualized those shots. Talk to me a little bit about that. What did he have to say about drawing from that win at the Derryfield?
Well, he just kind of talked about how, he looks back fondly on that experience and winning that tournament is just one of the stepping stones that he had to, that made him the player he is today. He went on to become an All-American at Tennessee Tech, and then turned pro shortly after he graduated. Played on the Hooters Tour and on the Nationwide Tour for a few years, and he earned his card at Q School last fall. And then he got off to a little bit of a tough start this year. He missed his first 5 cuts, but he struck up a relationship with Kenny Perry, who's a tour veteran with 14 wins, and now is playing a little bit. He splits time on the PGA Tour and the Champions Tour now. But Kenny helped get him a sponsor exemption into the Transitions Championship down outside of Tampa in March. Scott had kind of dropped to the bottom of the priority list in terms of getting into tournaments because he hadn't made any money, he hadn't made any cuts. So Kenny helped get him into Transitions, and Scott responded by finishing third, and he earned $374,000, and it really jump-started his season.
Yeah, not a bad little paycheck for him. And we talked about that last week. Kind of just comes from obscurity. Nobody really knows him. Ends up being boys with Kenny Perry. Kenny Perry gets him into his tournament, as you said, finishes third, and then just gains that level of confidence and just keeps it flowing from there. Now, you had a chance to talk to him after he won. Did he disclose any of his celebration activities? Did he let you know what he did to celebrate his first win and a good chunk of change he won there at the Greenbriar as well?
Yeah, he won over $1 million for that victory at the Greenbriar. He said the ensuing couple of days were completely overwhelming. He didn't really let in on any specific celebrations. He did say he celebrated a little bit with some of the guys from Titleist, who are one of his sponsors, and he did several national media commitments in the day or two after that tournament. But he said it was one of the most rewarding parts of it for him. In addition to all of the perks that come with winning on the tour, was really getting congratulated by guys like Steve Stricker and Sergio Garcia and Stuart Sink and Zach Johnson, well-established tour players who sought him out when he got to Akron and came up and shook his hand and congratulated him.
Yeah, certainly that's got to be a nice thing to have those guys that are accomplished golfers say, "Hey, welcome to our group, our circle of players. Now you've made it, you've won." And I'm just shocked that he didn't take the celebration activities to the Derryfield deck, because that would be a great place for him to get out there and just, have a few beverages with everybody and celebrate. Now, he went on to Akron. He's playing pretty well this week. Got to be a little bit overwhelmed. Did he talk about what's in the future for him? Obviously, he's going to be playing on the PGA Tour on a regular basis now. Anything he hinted at as what else is on the schedule for him?
Well, he was scheduled, had he not won at Greenbriar, he was scheduled to be playing at the Reno Tahoe Open this week, which is a second-tier event with a $3 million purse. Instead, he gets the ticket to Akron, the Bridgestone WGC Championship, which has got an $8.5 million purse. He's tied for 30th through 3 rounds, and he's actually 2 strokes ahead of Tiger Woods, who he grew up idolizing, which is pretty interesting. But no, he'll be playing in his first major this coming week at the PGA Championship outside Atlanta. He also earned an invitation to next spring's Masters, which for any golfer is huge. He will, before that, be coming up to the Deutsche Bank Championship, the second FedEx Cup playoff event. He going into Greenbriar, he was 88th on the FedEx Cup standings and was looking fairly good to make it to Deutsche Bank. But with the win, he pretty much guaranteed a slot coming up to Boston. He's an avid Red Sox fan and is psyched about the possibility to go to Fenway Park while he's in town for the tournament. And also having a lot of family in the area, he's excited to have people like his grandmother, Barbara Conant, who's follows Scott religiously, has her laptop tuned in to PGAtour.com and their shot tracker feature, and she follows all of his rounds that way. So he's excited about that, and he's also going to get into a couple of lucrative late-season events over in Asia, the HSBC Champions in
that's
Shanghai,
a big one,
which is another World Golf Championship event, as well as the CIMB Asia Pacific Classic over in Malaysia, which is a PGA Tour co-sanctioned event. He's never been to Asia before, so he's looking forward to those events as well.
Yeah, he's got a pretty full schedule, and obviously the Deutsche Bank will be a great one for him, having the family, as you mentioned. I will definitely be there covering that event. I don't know if you're going to go down and check that event out, but I've been there the past 2-3 years. It's a great event, great course, probably a course that fits his game pretty well too. You got to drive it pretty long there, and he's a solid driver of the golf ball, has a pretty solid iron game, so a place where he could certainly play well and certainly contend. I'm sure his grandmother would be happy to see him contend there. Now, do you think if he matched up Tiger one-on-one at the Dairy Field, who takes that match?
I don't know. Scott would at least have some local knowledge.
Yeah, that's for sure. He's got some experience there. Certainly, he's got some good feelings about that. And it's just interesting to see a guy that grew up in Tennessee, comes up to New Hampshire, plays golf in the summertime, and draws from an experience at the Dairy Field. Now, did he say that he visualized himself on the Dairy Field first tee every once in a while when he was at the Greenbriar or anything like that, or he just sort of said that it was a positive experience for him?
Yeah, he didn't say anything like that. He did look back on it with fond memories, however. And he did mention that he's still in touch with a few of the New Hampshire guys that he played against when he was a junior up this way, including Matt Giftos, who was a very good Nashville player who had won 3 Red Ryan titles in a row until Scott stopped him in 2003.
Wow, that's interesting. Keeping the New Hampshire Hampton lineage alive, staying in touch with people. It sounds like a great guy. I've never had the chance to meet him. Obviously, you've talked with him. I don't know if you met him in person, but seriously, sounds like a great guy. Now, did he mention anything about Anthony Kim going into that final round and sort of the pressure that he put on himself? It seemed like Anthony Kim, in the interview that I saw after Saturday's round, was saying, well, tomorrow hopefully will be better, and it seemed like he put a lot of pressure on himself to perform because he hasn't won in a while. He had the injury. Did Scott mention anything about putting pressure on himself or Anthony's pressure that he put on himself throughout that or from that interview?
We didn't really talk about Anthony specifically, but I think Anthony is obviously a huge talent, and I think I think the biggest challenge for him is in his head. I think he's got the physical tools, but I think mentally is where he needs to do a little growing, and obviously I think the experience at Bridgestone will likely help him down the road.
Yeah, for sure. And Anthony is a guy that we talked about last week, ultra talented, came up with that thumb injury off the course, had some questions about where his mind was at. As I said, I saw him down in Connecticut, looked a little bit disinterested, but a guy that certainly got a ton of talent. But Scott Stallings is really what it's all about. Had a great win, obviously a really, really good player. I don't know. You got to watch out for this guy coming up. Do you think he wins again on the PGA Tour next year or even later this year?
Well, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. One of the things Scott talked about was how watching his good friend Keegan Bradley win earlier this year at the Byron Nelson was something that he learned from. Keegan, as you know, is the nephew of great LPGA Hall of Famer Pat Bradley, who grew up playing her golf at Nashville Country Club. Keegan grew up in Vermont and down in Massachusetts and sort of took a similar road to the tour as Scott did. They both played on the Hooters Tour and on the Nationwide Tour together, and both earned their cards for this year. So I think Scott, seeing Keegan out there, a guy that considered a peer and a good friend, coming through and winning, I think that really inspired him to come through. And as you know, Keegan is in the hunt this week. He's only 2 off the lead at Bridgestone. Going into today's final round.
Yeah, no, that's got to be comforting to see somebody that you know and somebody that you grew up playing with and somebody you probably, he's probably gone out and beat him in a few practice rounds and said, you know what, this kid's got the game to win. I have to have the game to win too. And you're right, Keegan Bradley grew up in Woodstock, Vermont, right up the street from where I grew up in Lebanon, New Hampshire, which is the home of Nick McDonald, who we'll have on in the next segment. Interestingly enough, I saw him down in Connecticut. Keegan looked ultra confident, really, really poised in the way he played, and you could tell that he was confident and poised poised to get a win, certainly, or he had won at that point actually already, but you could just tell that he was taking his game to another level. He wasn't nervous, and you could see that with Stallings last week, although I wasn't there in person, but you could see it on TV. Stallings looked ultra confident throughout that playoff. Hit a great shot on the 18th hole again and made birdie to win it. So just amazing victory for him. Mike, we're going to take a break here. Thanks for coming on with us. We really appreciate it. Love to have you on again. That's Mike Cullity from the Union Leader, contributor for Golf World Magazine. You can check him out. He's got a website. Now, Mike, what is your website exactly? What's the web address on that one?
It's www.mikecullity.com.
Yeah, and so you can check him out. He's got all his articles up there. Certainly got a lot of knowledge about golf in the local and the national scene, so check him out. Mike, thanks again for coming on. Thank you for everything. We look forward to having you on again. Great stuff. Check out his piece in the Union Leader today. Thanks again, Mike.
Thanks, JJ.
We are going to take a break here on the New England Golf Radio Show. As I mentioned, up next we will have Nick McDonald from Lebanon, New Hampshire, my hometown, the winner of the New Hampshire State Stroke Play. He came in second in the State Am, came in second in the New Hampshire Open. We're going to talk to him about that event, talk to him about his mindset and all those things right here on WGAM.
Hey, Whitey, where's your hat?
Dedicated